and how to not let your self-doubt, let your negative perception bias and all of that hinder you from being successful, because that's where you want to go at the end of the day. You want to be successful. I feel like I talk a lot about preparation and how to prepare for something to come, like interviews, resumes, getting into university, what major you're going to choose. But I feel like what's not talked about enough is what happens after you accomplish something. What happens when you make a decision? And something that I really feel is that I spend so much time thinking about the future. And then when I get it, I feel so overwhelmed. I feel like I can't do it. I have that imposter phenomenon. And then I catastrophize all the outcomes that could go wrong when I receive it. So if I have like a job, like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to see my friends. How am I going to manage my routines? How am I going to cook dinner? How am I going to do everything? And I feel like all the stress is not talked about enough. And I finally learned that there's actually a theory to this about why you feel overwhelmed after you arrive at the moment or the dream. Hi, guys. Welcome back to Clearly Becoming, a podcast all about inspiring and empowering ambitious individuals in navigating the chaos of their 20 somethings. And I definitely understand that being a 20-something-year-old myself. And just remember that you can be ambitious and confused at the same time. I know I am. So, this episode, as I prefaced before, is all about the transition stage when you get the outcome and what happens afterwards, and can you sustain it? And why I wanted to speak about this topic was because I feel like right now I am in a stage of transition. And for me, transition can be really scary and it can also be really stressful and overwhelming. I don't know if you guys get this, but whenever I'm stressed or overwhelmed, like my body knows. I get canker sores sometimes, my stomach hurts, I just don't feel like myself, or I get sick. And I think that's all about just the body knowing that you're under this intense amount of stress. It's funny because I have been stressing so much about getting a job and getting that outcome and things like that, and moving to a new city and really making, I guess, a new chapter of my life as I finish up this other chapter, which I just talked about in the last episode, my university episode. And I was worrying about it. I had no idea what I was going to do for the next X amount of months. I had no idea what I was going to do in May, even. And now I feel like I've fortunately been able to get a little bit more clarity around my situation and what I'm going to do. And it happens so fast. And now it feels like I'm stressed about moving. I'm stressed about starting something new. I'm stressed about this new chapter of my life. And it was just really jarring to me because I was like, this should be a happy time. Why am I not optimistic? This is everything that I wanted. This is everything that I dreamed of. Why am I feeling so overwhelmed and stressed? And it's not to discount that stressful emotions because that is very stressful. But I also realized that I tended to do this whenever I received or arrived at an outcome. Like when I got my part time job as a sales associate, I was so excited. And then immediately I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to navigate this with all of my friends? How am I going to do my uni work? How am I going to keep my grades up? And I felt like I had no work life balance. And then it also happens when I got my study abroad offer. Like, first, I was excited, obviously, that I got accepted, but then I was overwhelmed about the transition, about how I was actually going to navigate it, how I was going to make new friends, leaving my old friends behind, starting a new life for 6 months, and moving to a new place that I had no idea what was going to happen, starting new modules, which modules to even choose. And it just got all very overwhelming. I found this concept actually when I was on TikTok. And then I researched a little bit more about it. And I'm going to link the user that I found it from because I thought he explained it really well. But what this is it's called the emotional cycle of change. And there's 4 stages. Really, there's 5, but there's 4 main stages. I'm just going to list out the stages and then I'll get into it. The first stage is uninformed optimism. The second stage is informed pessimism. And then number 3 is the valley of despair. And then 4 is informed optimism. And 5, the +1, is basically that success stage. So uninformed optimism is that dream state. It's kind of the delusional world that you're in. Like, oh, I'm going to move to a new city and I'm going to start my new job and I'm going to live the life that I've always dreamed of. Or I'm going to go to a university that I've been wanting to go to. It's where my parents have went to. It's whatever like that. And so you're kind of just in that really, you don't really know like how you're actually going to get there, but you're just excited, and it's the anticipation of the outcome. And this can be really important because it also helps you to be excited for this next chapter. And I think it's a really important stage, honestly, for you to just see what you want in life, be curious and experiment with things, learn from other people, take inspiration from people. But I also feel like you're not really grounded in reality, and hence why you're so optimistic about the opportunity. And so for me, this was moving to a new city and starting my new life. This was my uninformed optimism because I actually don't really know what it is. Because I actually don't really know what it takes to move there and live there and have this new life that I'm dreaming of. It's basically when you're creating that mood board. And then number two is that informed pessimism. So this is when you actually receive the job offer or when you move to that new city and you're transitioning and you're like, hold on a second. This is a lot more daunting than I actually thought of. This is very overwhelming. Or it's when you are actually applying for those jobs even. And so it's the applications. It's a lot of the applications. I mean, I've applied to maybe 100 of them. This is honestly just given this landscape and this employment realm that we're in right now, that's honestly a lot of the reality for most people. It's like sending in hundreds of applications and maybe only receiving two or three back. And it's a lot. It's trying and it feels like I'm never going to get it. And it's a lot of work and a lot of rejection and a lot of unknown and uncertainty. And also, maybe when you're moving to a new place, I know when I was moving to London, it was so much more scary than I had ever thought possible. I mean, I didn't know the culture. And even though they speak English here, it's a totally different culture than I was used to in Asia. And then also in my little formative years of living in the States. I mean, I had no idea that on Sundays, things are really open from 12 to 5, maybe 12 to 6 p.m., which is very different when you're in America or in Singapore or, the subway system or the tube system, how it all works. And then figuring out which stores to buy kitchen supplies from, cleaning supplies, groceries, supermarkets, and thrifting and charity shops and clothing and where to buy all that things. I mean, I didn't know about Argos or Currys and all those little niche shops that you have in a local city. And so it's a lot to get used to, and it feels very overwhelming. Also, not to mention the fact that I was moving for the first time away from my family, and I have a late birthday, so I was 17 at the time. And that's a lot for a 17-year-old, figuring out how to live alone, make new friends in a big city for the first time on your own. And so that's kind of what the informed pessimism is. Now you know the reality of what happens, and it's not as joyful or as bright as you might have thought it would be. And it can be a little bit isolating as well. And then number three is that valley of despair. Basically, it's like when you're sucked down in this place where you think nothing good can happen. This is definitely a universal feeling that we all share. And we can get stuck in this pattern. And honestly, if you've even gotten to the valley of despair, that's pretty impressive because most people don't even make it out of step two. They just give up and quit. And so congratulations for coming to the valley of despair. And I know that sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but honestly, it means that you've gotten past further than a lot of people have because you're trying something new and you're moving into that unknown and uncertainty. Basically, this is where you have that negative bias perception or negative connotation towards everything. It's like nothing can go right. Nothing is going at the speed of the way that I want to. And this might be in a job when you're not getting promoted fast enough, or it's maybe when you're in that application stage and you're not receiving any and you've sent so many and you're just like, I'm never going to get it. I just want to give up. This is just not for me. Or maybe it's when you move to a new city and you feel like you don't have a real community that you mesh with, or you're still alone and not really ingrained into this new place that you're living in. And it still doesn't feel like that dream that you imagined and you feel like you can't get there. It's that gap between what you wanted and where you are, which is really hard because you had anticipated so much for this. And then in reality, it's not really coming into fruition. And that can be sad sometimes. And you can really feel that nothing is going to actually work out how you wanted it to. It's so important to push through the stage, and you can do it. You can go to that informed optimism. It takes one thing. It takes one friend. It takes one job. It takes one application. It just takes one thing to get you there. And you never know when that might come. And this is why you really have to wait it out. And I definitely feel like this when I was applying and not hearing back. It only takes one person to give you that opportunity in order to get over this step. And you never know when it's going to happen. And that's why it's so challenging. And so I'm really grateful that I waited it out. I did all I could. And this isn't to say that you're just going to wait around and hope something's going to happen. No, you need to be grounded in the reality sense of that. You need to make it happen. You need to take the steps to make that opportunity come. And what I mean by this is keep applying, keep putting yourself out there. And maybe you're not going to receive the result, but detach from that outcome because you know that you're doing every single thing that you can. And sometimes things just don't happen on the timeline that you want. When you're feeling overwhelmed, it most likely means that you're stepping out of your comfort zone. And it's stressful because you haven't done this before. You don't have a reference point for it. And it seems like this is where you've been all your life, but this is where you want to go. And so this gap that you're seeing, that's uncomfortable and that can be stressful, but it's a good kind of stress. And this is something that I feel like as a culture, we need to embrace more because it's so easy to stay at home. I like to stay at home every single night. If I could, I would. But it's so important to just get out, meet new people, even if it's not something that I want to do all the time. And it's not to say that I don't enjoy meeting other people. I do. It's just, it's a little bit scary. And I'd rather, be at home watching something on TV or doing my work or going to the same cafe every single time. And that's okay too. It's good to have that balance of comfort and discomfort. But it's easy to sway to one side of the spectrum. And that's why it's so important to challenge yourself and get yourself out there. And so when you have this informed optimism, it's when you know what it takes to actually get that goal or dream that you want. But it's when you got a little bit more of a pep in your step. And it's so maybe somebody commented on your video and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually making a difference. That's why when you comment on my podcast, it really makes a difference to me because it seems to me that I'm actually helping somebody or somebody actually resonates with the topic. And it inspires me to continue. And so it just takes that one thing. And so really, really make sure that when you're in that valley of despair, to push through, you can push through. Keep on doing the work because you are going to get to that informed optimism. I just know it. And you might have to adapt, and that's okay, but it will happen. And then step 5 is that success when you've seen the fruit of your actions, basically. And so this is where I feel like having that acknowledgement of this map and of these stages can help you push through it because you know that when you feel like nothing is coming and you're in that really intense emotion, but there is a brighter side at the end of the tunnel. There is that informed optimism that you can reach that, you can get what you want. You just have to continue and persevere. Something that I also wanted to mention a little bit was the neuroscience and the brain behind this. And so basically, when you have that prolonged stress, that feeling of being overwhelmed and like nothing is going to happen, that valley of despair, basically, it activates this thing called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenaline axis. And so for just ease, I'm going to call it the HPA, and this raises your cortisol levels. Also, just to say that in the morning, your cortisol levels are actually heightened because it's waking you up. So having elevated cortisol levels isn't a bad thing. It's just the prolongment of it. And this is what happens when you're chronically stressed. And it can actually damage the neurons in your hippocampus, which is attached to your memory. And it can really dysregulate your emotions. And this is why it feels like nothing is going right. And when you are feeling this hopelessness, it's been shown that that's attached to depression and anxiety. It also impacts that negative cognitive bias and perception of things like nothing is going right. And so basically, your brain can't think clearly because it's in that survival mode. And what happens when your brain is in that survival mode is that it wants to go back into that comfort zone. It wants to be able to keep you safe because that's what we're biologically wired to do. And Aberson actually talks about this hopelessness theory. And what happens is that when you experience enough blocked goals where maybe things haven't come to where you want it to be, your brain predicts failure as the default of it. And then you stop wanting to try because you've seen nothing successful from your actions. And that's the negative inferential style, is what he calls it. Basically, your brain is scanning for evidence that it hasn't worked out, and you keep on repeating that to yourself. So say that you've gotten rejected from an application and then you get rejected from another one and another one, or you don't hear back. Your brain automatically connects it as applying to being rejected. And then you don't want to try anymore because you're like, why should I? I've never seen anything successful come from it. but you have to continue doing it anyways because out of the 100 applications that you send in, you just need one. You need one chance, is what I talked about before. And so this is where I want to get into what things you can actually do. So when you're feeling that you're very overwhelmed and you're very stressed, and maybe that you haven't gotten that job that you wanted, or you haven't gotten into that university that you wanted, or you're panicking and you're just thinking nothing can go right. I've done everything that I could and nobody's giving me that one chance. Well, first, I want you to just take a breath. And I know that seems really cliche, but really do take a breath. That's actually helping calm your nervous system and do a little bit of sensory grounding. So, state the things that are around you in the present moment. So, state 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can touch, 2 things that you can smell, and things like that to just ground yourself in this present moment because then you are signaling to your brain that everything is actually okay, that you are safe. And so this helps you not go into that panic mode and your brain to be like on survival alert, basically. And it also targets the negative interpretation bias, which is when your brain stops treating these ambiguous signals or things that you are catastrophizing as threats. And then 2 is having micro actions and micro wins. And what I mean by this is that you are going to disengage from the blocked goals temporarily. So do things that you know have a successful outcome, basically. And this can be as little as making the bed. It'll feel good. Getting your morning coffee. You know that's going to make you more happy or energized or whatever you drink. Maybe it's a matcha, English tea. I have my English breakfast tea with me at the moment. I know this makes me feel happy in the morning. It's the little things in life. It's the small wins. It's maybe going to the gym and doing an extra rep because you know that's going to make you feel good. It can be so little, or it could be finishing one thing that you haven't done in a while, like doing the laundry, folding your clothes, whatever it might be, because you know it's going to have a good outcome at the end. And this basically resets your brain and it rebuilds that prefrontal cortex and amygdala connection damaged by that chronic stress that I was talking about earlier. And it signals that my actions have consequences. And not all the actions that I do are going to end up in failure. And so it interrupts your negative perception bias because you're seeing that your actions can actually have successful outcomes. And this is where you take back that agency. And then you can start applying again and maybe looking for housing or in a new city, or you can join a new community and you can get excited again because you know that not all of your actions are going to end up in failure. And then number 3 is that you're going to reframe the goal, not the effort. And this really helps to rebuild that agency as well. Instead of thinking of, well, I need to get a job or something like that, no, just think, okay, I need to send an application. Reframe it, adapt, do the things that you can actually control in this instance. You can't control who's going to like you. You can't control if you are going to get that promotion. You can't control whether or not you're going to receive that text or email that you've been waiting for. Do the things that you can. And these can be micro things as well. And so if you are looking for housing or when you're moving to a new city or something like that, look on the housing website, apply and ask for a house tour. Don't just be like, I need to get a flat today. I need to know where I'm living right now. And I'm just saying this because I've just been on the flat hunt. Now I have to start calling it apartment hunt for the last couple of weeks as I transition to a new city. And it's been very stressful. And I definitely, and this is me looking back on what I wish I did because I just, some reason I was waking up at 3 a.m. each morning because I was like, I need to find it. I need to do it right now. And honestly, that drive is pretty good. And I know myself that I'm quite disciplined and that's what I do. And it has served me well because it's gotten me further along in like a week, whereas it might have taken other people, not that it really matters how long it takes you, but it might have taken other people longer, but because I'm such a stressed out person and that I want to get things done and I need to know things right away, I tend to do things like I go into hard drive and I just really, really do it. I'm like that type A planner in that sense. But what I'm saying is reflecting back is that don't get stressed out about finding the perfect thing. Obviously, we all want to live in a nice place. We all want a good job. We all want whatever our goals and ambitions are. But do the things that are actually manageable and do the things one step at a time. I know that I won't be homeless in a sense. I know that my parents will support me. And I'm so grateful for all the support that they've given me, and just my friends as well who've helped me with all the looking at flats and sorry, apartments. I definitely have a great network of people, and I definitely could not do this without them. So I appreciate each and every one of them. And what I basically wanted to say about this is that it's just doing the work and putting in the effort and reframing it from, oh, I need something right now to, I just need to submit an application. I need to do a house tour today. I need to see which area I want to live in, what I want my life to look like in this instance, in this circumstance. And, if I don't get it, it's okay because I can find another one. It's not going to be the end of the world. When you reframe the goal and focus on the effort, it's taking back control of what you can do. And I guess this helps to re engage with those attainable goals and restores that perceived control and breaks that learned helplessness. Because I feel like that's where the victim mindset can get in. Like, nothing's working out for me. Well, are you actually putting in the work to make something happen? Is the question. And this also ties back to the third stage, the valley of despair. You can get so stuck in that because you have lost your agency. And so take back control, take back your agency, and reframe that negative perception to something positive. If you keep on surrounding yourself with negative thoughts and feelings that you are a failure and that you can't do it, well, you're only going to stay there because that's quote unquote what you know and what's safe to you, even. And so when you take back this agency and you reframe the goals to effort, it ends because you are actually pushing yourself to do the things that can actually get you to that informed optimism stage. And so when you're in that valley of despair or even that informed pessimism, just know that you're actually one step closer to achieving what you want and getting those opportunities. And so I hope this was helpful on just a little bit of insight about what happens in that transition stage and why when you actually arrive at the outcome that you want, it can feel a little bit jarring and scary and stressful. But just know there is hope at the end of the tunnel. You just have to push through and do the work to get there. And so now I want to end off with my clarity round, which I do each and every episode. I just think it's kind of fun to reflect on my week and see what I've learned. And hopefully it's interesting for you guys as well. And I love to have my guests do it too, because it's inspiring. And so one advice that I delete from the internet is sticking to a routine. And this is big for me because I love routines. I love getting up in the morning. I love, going to the gym. I love making my breakfast and then doing my work. But sometimes it's good to just break it up a little bit. And this teaches me to get out of my comfort zone. It teaches me what actually matters to me because the things that matter to me, I will implement into the day no matter what order it is. And so it just teaches you what you value and then maybe what you don't value as much, or things that you thought you were really disciplined in, but then you realize that, maybe I need to work on this a little bit more. It's really important to just mix things up and be curious and experiment, especially in your 20s, because that's how you can learn what you like and what you just like. And then one thing that I've had to unlearn to level up is staying attached keeps you from progressing. When you're stuck, you're actually just in your comfort zone and you're not actively trying to seek out new things. And so staying attached to something, that does the same thing. So I am constantly trying to detach myself from the outcome. And it's not to say like, oh, I'm just not going to commit to anything. That's not what I'm saying, because attachment and commitment are two very different things. And I like to think of myself as a pretty committed person. So when I say I want to detach, it's detaching from more of the outcome and just seeing what can happen. And especially as I enter this new chapter in my life, I am doing more experimenting than I ever have before. And it's scary, but it's worth it. And then somebody that I'm clearly becoming is somebody that doesn't have it all figured out and yet continues on and still pushes through, because it's so easy to think about that outcome and be in that delusional state, that first stage that I was talking about. And it is fun to do that. And don't get me wrong, I think this stage is super important, but it's also important to persevere further from that, because emotions are all on a spectrum and it can go up and down. And when you're happy, you can also be sad. And it's okay because it's always ever changing. It just teaches you that when you are in a happy place and when you are excited, to really relish in that feeling, because you never know when something might bring you down again. And that's not to say like, oh, like I'm never going to feel happy again or whatever it might be, but it's just to really experience every emotion, because you know that there's an upside and downside to each thing. So that is who I am clearly becoming, is something that even when they're maybe in a down state or even a happy state, to just really embrace it and then know that whatever comes next, you're going to figure it out, even if you don't know 100% what it might be. And so I opened this episode about why I was so confused that when I arrived at that dream or that goal that I wanted, why I was feeling so overwhelmed and stressed afterwards. And I realized it was because of that emotional cycle of change. I was going through that informed pessimism and valley of despair. And it's so easy to quit at those stages, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, as I've said before. And that valley that you're in or pessimism that you are stuck in, it's not the end. It's just showing you that you're somewhere that is really uncomfortable and you just need to continue on. You just need to continue on because how cool is it that you've actually progressed to that stage even? So just reframe it a little bit like that. This week, I want you to try to take one of those micro actions and do things that you know will guarantee your success, especially when you are feeling that nothing is going your way, because that will help to reset your brain that your actions have consequences and they're not all bad. But notice what happens once you do this to your brain, because I think it's really cool and kind of a helpful step and a helpful tip, even a life hack. And so definitely screenshot the stage you're in right now. If you're in a transition stage, are you in that stage 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it might be? I'd love to know. And definitely share this with somebody who's going through a transition or maybe has gotten a decision and then is feeling super overwhelmed and stressed. And just this episode might help bring a little bit of awareness into the situation and empower them to keep on pushing through. Comment below and share this episode, as I mentioned, and follow me on Really Becoming on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you might find it, so that I can continue making these episodes. And if there's anything that you want me to talk about, maybe that you're dealing with or having some challenges with, I'd love to hear them so then I can also be aware of them and maybe give some helpful evidence-backed insights or have some stories to share because I'm sure we can all relate. And this is what this community is all about. But thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye.